A hush falls over East Meadows. I know this is a rather unusual location for some of you, for us to be holding a media conference and a milestone day for Cavalry FC, but it's exquisitely correct in the Spruce Meadows way of thinking, because if you are a member of our other roster, the four-legged type that compete in the international show jumping world, this is the locker room you want to be in. This is where the big club has operated out of since 1975, and from this locker room we've been able to send horses to the World Championships, the Olympic Games, and the World Cup finals. So we're hoping it brings us a little bit of good luck on this very, very important day as we introduce you to a couple of young colts that we hope will carry Cavalry FC on to great things, not only in the CPL, but also carrying the Maple Leaf going forward. So without further ado, Coach and General Manager Tommy Wheeldon with some exciting news from Cavalry FC. Tommy.
Thanks, Ian. Pleasure to be up here. It's become a very repetitive thing when we get to be the first, and we keep announcing some new things, and it's exciting league because of that. Exciting to be at this club with this ownership group and this great place. And I've got probably the best and worst kept secrets here as I announce. Nick Ledgerwood and Sergio Camargo are the first two signings for Cavalry Football Club. And and everybody, will do their research and Google and look at that. But what you don't see with Google is the type of people they are. And I think that's important to us as we build a culture. We get a unique opportunity to sign every single player from scratch, not inherit anybody. So we did our due diligence. Obviously, we got a chance to work with these guys over the summer, and they're outstanding people. And I think when you're developing a team for the community, for inspirations to the young players out there to be role models within their team, I think it's important that these guys are the first two signings because they'll be a cornerstone of it. With Nick Ledgerwood, he comes with experience, and funnily enough, 17 years ago, we actually played together for the Calgary Storm. So he started his professional career here, and then he's obviously, hopefully, we the ones where he hangs up his boots here after quite a few more years. Especially with the way he plays. So when you get to see him play, he covers a lot of distance. He's a tenacious player. Played over 50 times for the national teams in some crazy places, and I think what he'll do is lead from within with the locker room, and we're delighted that he's going to be the cornerstone of our team. With Sergio's a different type of player, and I've said this publicly. He's a player that we don't have too many of in Canada. He's exciting. He runs at players. He attacks. He works very, very hard for the team, but he's a goal creator and goal scorer. He's still young at 16. No, Serge, 17. He's 24, and in football in terms, that's young. He's not hit his peak yet. So while we've experienced and signed somebody like Nick with who comes in with a history, you've got Sergio that still has to write his history. And like we're doing with the Cavalry Football Club, we're writing history. And I think he'll be one of those players that will do very, very well for us, and will be one to watch for the Canadian national team. That's for sure. Thank you very much for hearing me out. It's a great day to be here. Any questions?
Yeah, I after being over in Germany for 12 years, I came back to the NASL, which was the North American League, and Edmonton was the closest professional team to home, and that's kind of why it brought me home. I wanted to plant some roots in Canada with my family, and Edmonton was the closest to coming home after spending Lethbridge. I now live in Calgary, but Lethbridge is where I grew up. So my parents are still in Lethbridge, but my family and I now live in Calgary. But yeah, I spent 2 years with Edmonton in the NASL, and after that league kind of dissolved, like many other leagues that they tried in Canada. I had some very promising talks with Tommy about the future and the vision of the CPL and the Cavalry coming to town, and we just kept in touch over the years, and that's kind of how this came about.
Yeah, I mean, when we haven't kicked the ball in the professional league yet, I think you need Canadian players that have experienced, their pathway through here when, they've had to leave this city or others to pursue a dream in professional. Now he gets to help some of the young players experience it, and they don't have to leave anywhere. They can play here at their home or close to it. But what that comes is there's a difference when you play collegiate level. There's a difference when you play PDL, which we've come from, or academy football. It's a job. And for some, only 11 players can start. So they've got to be on their game. They've got to be consistent in training, and they've got to be good characters. And what Nick will help is, I'll say that over and over again as the head coach, but what he'll do is he'll be able to mentor some of the younger players. And I think as we grow this league, his role is very, very important. You got it.
Tell me what the future holds.
Well, he's yet to write it. I think that's the really exciting thing is, he's come from a great academy with TFC, so he knows what it's like to be a big club. He's bold enough that he's willing to adapt and try new things. He went across to the NCAA and played at Syracuse, but what he does is he brings that energy, and when you watch him play, the hairs on your neck stand up. He's going to be that type of player that fans are going to want to pay their entertainment dollar to watch, and his future's yet to be written. And me as a coach, I love working with players like Sergio for that reason.
Can you expand, Sergio, on what you bring?
Yeah, definitely. It's very flattering hearing that from Tommy, and I hope I can bring that excitement to the fans as well. My path was a little different than Nick's. Like Tommy said, I went to NCAA to get my education, and I was fortunate enough to sign with Toronto FC to start my professional career. And then when I got this opportunity to come to Calgary, I jumped on it because I knew Tommy was building something special for next year. So very excited to start working with these two.
So forgive my ignorance, this is the first you signed.
Correct.
All right, so this is, we now have a coach, a team, a coach, a logo, and a general manager, two players.
Yeah, we're getting there.
And we've been through the U Sport draft, which we are delighted with. So these guys will be the mentors for our young players in the U Sport program. Now those draftees from the U Sports, they're not signed yet?
No, they've been drafted to come in for training camp. So they're doing their off-season work now, so they can switch that training camp invite to a development contract.
So how exciting is this now that there seems to be heat on the ground?
It's Christmas come early, isn't it? It really is. Look, as I said, we've been working hard behind the scenes, and the staff and the ownership group here and it's hard to keep things nailed down and locked down. League has done a phenomenal job in, revealing the whole batch of players that we're signing across the country. But it is exciting because, like I said, they're the first ever signings, and then the next wave, we've got some promising ones coming up. And I've just returned from a trip to Europe as well, where there'll be a international pedigree coming over as well to add to the group we're playing of Canadian players. And it's fantasy football, but it's my day-to-day job.
How many imports are you looking at?
Up to 7.
Up to 7.
Yeah.
Nick, I'm curious. You mentioned Storm, you mentioned the NASL. Well, why do you think the CPL is going to be different?
Yeah, I think, like Tommy said, why it's taken so long to, unveil some of this stuff. That they're doing their homework. They're, looking into all the investors, the ownership groups, the people behind the scenes that are going to help run this league. And I think they've learned from the past, and now having the commitment of, Spruce Meadows and Ian himself behind a team like this, I think that's kind of their promise, saying that, they want to build a sustainable league. They want to build a league that's going to be around for the next 10, 20, 30 years to help build soccer in Canada. And I think then you have also that aspect, we're not joined with the U.S. We have nothing to do with the U.S. We're Canadians doing it our way across Canada. And I think that's what's special about this league.
And what will it do for Canadian development? Because we see our men's program is still pretty high.
Yeah, I think this is the next step to creating a bigger player pool. Something, we didn't have that depth before. We had 4 professional teams in Canada, all tied with the U.S. None of them played more than a handful of Canadians. Now all of a sudden you have 7 professional teams within Canada. Younger kids can now aspire to play for their local city. There's now a clear pathway for these kids growing up, something to aspire to be the next Sergio or the next, Nick Ledgerwood. They can see it live instead of, having to watch it on TV and hope to go overseas one day.
Toronto. Yeah. Grew up in Toronto, yeah. Just Newmarket, so shout out to Newmarket.
So why Calgary? Not Toronto.
GTA.
So why Calgary? There's lots of opportunities.
Yeah, and those were choices and options for me as well. But I think just me coming to Calgary and experiencing and building this relationship with Tommy, I thought this was the right move, and I fell in love with the city as well. I've been here since May, and everyone's welcomed me beautifully. So I had nothing negative to go off of.
Is there a bidding war?
Behind the scenes.
Yeah. Yeah. So having come through the Got Game program, Jock, where the coaches and the organizations looked at 1,600 players or something like that across the country, and it really became clear that there was great momentum across the country. So we're delighted that Sergio, with many options, Nick as well, would choose to come here. And then just to follow up on your question, the 2026 announcement with FIFA and the joint bid has also, although it was never part of the aspiration or due diligence in the early going of the league, it's also provided another great catalyst for young players in this country, because the World Cup is the prize in this sport, and that now that there are pathways that coaches and players can pursue, I think it's an interesting time, exciting time.
What do you guys think about making a market of soccer players in this city as far as defensive lanes and standards generally?
You want me to answer that? I can answer that. We really love the comparatives to the venue you're in right now at Spruce Meadows, in that it is an unlikely sport and an unlikely place in some respects, but Calgary is a very, very diverse cosmopolitan city now. It has 1.5 million people in the catchment area. This sport itself has twice as many people playing it as hockey in this country. And those are the types of things and that's not to disparage hockey at all, but it truly is a global sport. And where we are in the management administrative element of this program is to one day have players not only Canadian, but internationals wanting to play on the meadows on the green, just like the best horses and riders in the world want to come through the clock tower now. And it doesn't happen instantly, but we think the parallels and the opportunity and the enthusiasm is there. We have close to 1,100 members now for Cavalry FC, and we have yet to hit the market. But I think our membership today and the fans in the city, with great leadership and coaches, not only with Tommy but also with Jordan, who's here today, and Martin Nash leading the program on the field, and then you build from the foundation, and that's the ownership group, and that's the quality of the venues to watch it, and it's the quality of the game. So that's how we'll compete. It's and you have to win, and we're undefeated right now. Let me remind you. The renovations aren't finalized, but the plans are. So, well, it needs to be ready by Easter. So the production chain on that was to get the field to FIFA regulations. So immediately after the summer series at Spruce Meadows in July, we removed the fountains and the water jump from the middle of the selected stadium, because those don't bode well for professional soccer. And we installed a new drainage system and turf, which took very well over the summer months, and proved to be very effective in its drainage, because in September, or first week of October, we had 38 centimeters of snow in the ring, and the turf responded brilliantly. We played a prospects game with FC Edmonton that membership showed up, a couple thousand plus, to get us to have a clearer understanding of game day operations, which is a little bit different than international show jumping. I think the players can comment how the ground felt, but we've also had a number of closed practices, and we've had some what I would call other prospects come in over the course of the fall to see how they fared against our Canadian folks here. And not only did we fare very well, but the field held up well. The locker room designs have been finalized, and they are now under construction. And as of today, the groundwork is starting for the grandstand installation, and there will be a 4,000-seat covered grandstand on the east side of the meadows on the green. Again, something we took away from the prospects game, in that at the prospects game we monitored the fan behavior and choices of where they wanted to watch the game. So for those of you that were with us in May when we announced the club, there are some material differences, all for the benefit of the fans, in our opinion, in that there will be a covered grandstand all between the 105-meter length of the field, as well as options in the end zone and actually right down on the field of play, should you wish. So all of that will get unveiled in the next couple of days.
So in terms of audience capacity,
6,000.
6,000.
Correct.
Okay, 4,000 are under a.
Yes. And then your end zone seating and the corporate boxes that are available.
When will you have those?
Tomorrow.
See you tomorrow at 11.
Yeah, no, listen, it's a staggered effect. So what we wanted to do, and to your point about how will it be successful, it's methodical in the way it's been done here, and I have to give credit to the league on that. Is we're announcing these two. We're now going to work on our next couple, our next batch of players. For me, when training camp, we want to have our draft picks and some of our got game trialists and things like that, and any other local players we seem maybe on the edge. We'll do that in the middle of February, so about that time is when I want to have things nailed down in terms of my squad, with a view to 1 or 2 roster spots being open for any successful trialist.
And how does that compare to the other teams right now?
It's interesting. We've all announced today our first 1 or 2 signings, which has been good. But then everybody's under a same type of list of players that they're trying to work towards. Some might have theirs done before Christmas. They might already have their batch of players. But like I said, we've got our due diligence, so we're going to take a little bit longer to get the right people as well as the right players. But it'll be in around that Valentine's time, so it'll be a nice romantic time to get all the players together.
Ian, we don't have quite the same issues here in Canada with the soccer hooliganism that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But are you worried about that? Like I was lucky enough to go to a game in Amsterdam with Ajax. It was a high-risk game, so there were beer sales and everything else like that. So just one of those situations that do you expect that?
It's an interesting question because it has been surfaced on a couple of occasions, and while we expect to have enthusiastic fans, we also will adhere to a decades-long code of conduct here for everybody. And it's one of those things that I'm not naive to, but I'm not overly worried about. Through CSA and the game regulations, there are processes and criteria that are put in place for game day security and game day pre-game inspection, march to the match. I'm more optimistic that it will be truly unique professional soccer experience, not only in Canada. Tommy was sending me pictures from the various stadiums he's been at over the last 10 days, and I think it's fair to say, enthusiastically saying, I can hardly wait to get onto our own battlefield. The game will unfold literally, Jock, from the grandstand from me to Todd. That's how close the seating is going to be. It's going to be a really, really terrific experience. But, to go to your concern, there will be game day security and there will be an expectation of code of conduct, and whether you're a member or a non-member. So it's for the benefit of all and for the growth of the sport, not to put any scars on it. I know. That's why we put you in a special section.
I think to Ian's point, we're all governed by FIFA, CONCACAF, and CSA. So there's going to be regulations that we have to meet in terms of security and how fan behaviour acts, and there'll be a zero tolerance policy on that. But I think what's really neat about it is we get to grow the supporters culture here, because we've tried with different football teams here in American leagues, and it hasn't quite worked. Here is going to grow organically, and the best thing I can talk about, having been to the CFL, to the NHL games, to the lacrosse in town, to baseball, everyone has a different culture, and what I like about the soccer culture is it's organic. It's not the mascots that create the tunes, it's the fans themselves, and I think that's what's going to separate us from a different sporting event and venue, is the fans are going to decide what they want to sing, who they want to sing about, who they want to chant about on the opposition team, and it's going to create a really unique sporting experience.
And as you well know, you can go to 3 different events with 3 associates, and your approach to the CFL versus the NHL versus the NLL can be completely different given the sport and the environment and whatnot, and the same will apply to CPL games, I'm sure.
And again, the atmosphere outside of the European soccer leagues
Yeah.
like that. So there's a lot of, whether you see tailgating here in the CFL, or you see, the drinking to excess in European soccer, obviously, so that.
Well, our events team has a really good fix on what we would call the march to the match and how we envision the pre-games unfolding here. I think we have the luxury of both being able to facilitate game day parking and or LRT and complimentary shuttle service. And the game day experience will not only be the undefeated home record that's expected of Cavalry FC, but also that
No
it's
pressure, Ian. Okay,
it's
thanks.
it's going to be a memorable sporting event, and that's for all the right reasons, and that's the impression we want to make.
I know you were saying it really kicked off your season, the big campaign for sure. Have you got a bunch of deposits down already, or?
Well, every one of the 1,100 members have put a deposit down for an option on season's tickets. Yes. Yeah. We're excited. And there's another thing that, as Todd and you and the rest of the media here well know, Spruce Meadows does like tradition and some types of things, and I would like Tommy with our first two players now to bring them on board and color them up with their appropriate hardware and their scarves, and along with you guys, we all hope to ride together.
Welcome aboard. Thank you. And let me get in between the
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting and we can provide it to you. If you read the manifest on the history of how we arrived at not only our club, but also every club from coast to coast, it's been another terrific exercise led by the CPL in building these cultures. And our colors represent the historic colors of the founding regiment of Spruce Meadows, the Lord Strathcona's Horse, which is blood over grass. And those colors then had their own nuance in our manifest to come with the official colors, which are called Calgary Red and Military Green. And Tommy has been working. He got to bring in his fashion designer, and you can see he is quite a bespoke kind of a guy, and going over and put the final touches on our official kit, which will be revealed in the spring, and I think will be very popular as well, home and away. Yeah.
It's been a good story.
Although now it's interesting because our story was, when they did the research on us, the market and whatever, it didn't really involve too much of our input. They went to the community and they talked to people about the history and the sense of community, with whether it be in floods or reaching out to other communities, and how that all based back to the Lord Strathcona's Horse, Royal Canadians, based from this part of the world, forming their own army to go to the Boer War because the Canadian government couldn't afford to send one over there or had no interest in it, and that is rooted right here in the foothills of Western Canada. So it made a lot of sense for us to head down that road in building our brand and our culture. Any further questions? Well, I'm sure some of you will want some one-on-one opportunities, and I want to thank you very much for coming with us today. We look forward to heading down this build-out process with roster and further announcements, and then opening our new facilities in the spring of next year and starting play, which I know these guys are all eager to get underway with, and that'll start with a winter training session, probably not on the snowfields of Western Canada. But thank you very much.
Thanks.